This is another Captain Marvel's book written by Van Morrison. This is issue number 3 of the mini-series that introduced us to Captain Marvel's, the real one, noh-varr. This was meant to be like a revamp, a reinvention of Captain Marvel's for the Millennium generation. So now Captain Marvel's, he has got guns and he swears and he wears shorts, so he is badass. And despite how bad that all sounds on paper, keep an open mind because this is Van Morrison writing. One of the more interesting aspects of this series is maybe that this was originally envisioned and intended to be part of the Ultimated Universe. This was meant to be like the Ultimated Captain Marvels. But for whatever reason, it morphed into just being set in the main Marvel universe. And the idea of this issue, the token big Van Morrison idea, is that there is a sentient corporation that is going to take over the whole world. A sentient corporation is both the most Van Morrison idea possible and also one of the tamest Van Morrison ideas around. And this is Captain Marvel's, the real one, noh-varr. And his connection to Captain Marvel's, the real one, mar-vell, or any of the other real ones, is pretty weak. The only real connecting tissue is that he is a Kree, the same alien race as the mar-vell and genis-vell versions. This green fella, that is the wifey from American Beauty X, who was in the film Captain Marvel's, starring Captain Marvel's, the shit one, Brie Larson's. This version of Captain Marvel's probably is best known, sadly, for when Michael Brian Benson tried to claim him as his own. Oh, there is a really good image of the character to focus on while I talk about this. This character, Captain Marvel's, the real one, noh-varr, he was introduced in this miniseries by Van Morrison. It came out in the year 2000 and he didn't appear again until 2008 when Michael Brian Benson, as he often does, discovered some character created by someone better and decided to adopt him and try and convince people he actually created this character. He does it with loads of characters like the Century, or Hoodman, or Ars, the God of War. And Benson, he predictably butchered this character. Gone were the two notable elements of this series, and this is his only appearance before Benson. Gone are the high concepts and the teenage angst. Instead, he was just retrofitted as the same Benson character who says crap sarcastic quips and just sits around in the background eating food and daying out. I have seen a review of this issue. I try not to look at other reviews of comics that I am reviewing, but I remember this review from years ago, like back in the days when this came out. Some guy, he had a website and he was moaning and moaning, doing a really long rant about the politics of this comic. And I do not want any review I ever do to be anything like that. I will say, despite that person's utter rejection of Van Morrison's thesis on economy, he still gave this comic a really good rating. This here, down here, this is something we lost for the character. You see, Benson, he blatantly did not read this series. He just saw the covers or Tom Beaver told him a one-sentence summary of the character, but Captain Marbles, the real one, noh-varr, he actually has a proper costume and this mask helmet thing, and it's never seen again. Another thing the character had in this series, and some other writers who wrote him in like guest appearances have actually done it as well, just not Benson. He had gadgets. He had a lot of gadgets. He was like Inspector Gadget. They were high concept Van Morrison toys. Like, I remember he had this little like cube thing in his pocket that he would throw down on the ground, and then it would like expand into a personal arena where Captain Marbles, the real one, noh-varr, he controlled every facet of reality within it. Benson's version never did out besides bang Moonstomp from the Thunderbars. So Captain Marbles, the real one, noh-varr, he is opposing the sentient corporation. And this is a recommend, so I'm trying not to spoil the story much, just showing off the art, which is good, and talking about the character in general. There was actually meant to be a sequel to this series, written by Van Morrison. The final issue of this series, it was a 6-issue mini-series, it announces, it teases the sequel and tells you to look for it in the year 2001, but it never came out. Like most of Van Morrison's non-excellent men work at mar-vell, this series does go ignored. It wasn't even available in trade until recently, and I think that is more a reflection on the lower tier of property rather than the book's quality. This is probably the best issue of the series. It's probably got the most to say, and actually I didn't really like the first issue, or maybe the first 2 issues of this series. At least the first time I read them, I didn't like the first issue at all. I think it was this one, or maybe the next issue, where it won me around. I think it maybe took Van Morrison a bit too long to really work out what he was doing with this new character. There's very little personality in that first issue, and it's around this issue, or maybe the next issue, that he starts playing up the teenage angst elements, the outcast elements, finally giving him something like a proper personality. The idea that this character being an outcast, an outsider, I guess that is another link to Captain Marbles, the real one, mar-vell. Mar-vell, he was exiled from the Kree, and well, noh-varr, he was effectively exiled from his whole reality. I forgot to say that he's actually from another reality. It's not the most relevant of things. He was on a Kree exploration mission into the multiverse, and everyone on his ship but him died, and he wound up in the mainstream mar-vell universe. Although, I suppose if this was truly meant to be an ultimated book, maybe the idea seemed less random. They didn't really commit to aliens in the ultimated books immediately, or at least they tried to limit the use of aliens, and maybe the idea was that Captain Marbles, the real one, noh-varr, he was actually from the main mar-vell universe, and he landed in the ultimated universe. Jose Quesada, he actually said that under him, the 2 universes would never cross over. So maybe that is why this went from being an Ultimated book into being a mainstream Marvel Universe book. And then at the end, here is a bondage woman as a prize for my sterling detective work about why maybe this is not an Ultimated book. I recommend this issue. It is mostly standalone, besides that little cliffhanger, and it's probably the most talked about issue of this series. This one or issue 2 when he does a swear, but ask yourself, which sounds better? The one where he does a swear, or the one where he fights an evil living corporation? I rate this one 7 thumbs up.